The Hazy podcast is brought to you by EKtheDJ and Michael Reid. Join them each season as they discuss the adventures contained in various audiobooks. This season, they'll be providing reactionary commentary on the So I Got Hazed audiobook by Michael Reid.
All right. Well, Eric will be reading the stories tonight, which will be interesting because he'll be telling one of his stories from my perspective as he told it to me once upon a time.
Once upon a fraternity. All right. Where are we at here? This is Trashcan to the Dome. Characters in this story are Chippy, Eric, Kyle, and Mitch. When Eric was pledging our fraternity, he hated one of the brothers named Kyle. Kyle always took hazing too far. This usually occurred when he was in a cocaine-fueled frenzy, which was often. During a nightly hazing session in one of our fraternity house basements, Kyle and Mitch were hazing Eric and his pledge brother Chippy. Kyle was coked to the gills, and Mitch was more or less supervising. The pledges were on their knees with their backs up against the cold cement basement wall. They were reciting the Greek alphabet, chugging hot sauce, getting jugs of water thrown on them, and eating onions. You know, the usual. At one point, Kyle got so bored, he decided to throw a full-size trash can at Eric's head. When it hit his head, trash exploded everywhere. Some broken glass in the trash can cut Eric's head, and he freaked out. Eric stood up and started to leave. His pledge brother, Chippy, tried to get him to stay. Kyle yelled, "If you leave, you won't be able to become a Sig-H brother." Eric turned around and said, "No one would ever want to be a brother to you." He walked up the basement stairs and left. Kyle had taken it too far, and Eric called out his bullshit. He stood his ground during the hazing and knew when it had crossed the line. Unfortunately, Chippy was left alone, and Kyle continued to haze him all night. The next day, multiple fraternity brothers called Eric to apologize. They agreed that Kyle had taken the hazing too far. They invited Eric to come back and finish pledging. They also told him that Kyle wouldn't be able to haze anyone else for the rest of the semester. Eric agreed to continue pledging, and later in the semester, he made it into the fraternity. Although Eric and Kyle became brothers, they never became friends. This is true. I never really had any desire to hang with those guys. Just they always took everything too far. Between the drugs, the drinking, there was never a good buzzed night. It was always a fucking blitzed and blacked out night. I don't remember if it was Mitch or if it was Kyle, but one of them, like, I had to babysit because he was blacked out drunk one night, and he passed out and hit his head on a corner of an air conditioner and like cut his head up. And then like he came to, and I think I was at his house. I don't remember, but he came to and like got up, walked to the middle of the room, and just like pissed in the middle of the floor. And I don't know. I don't remember much beyond that point. It was just so ridiculous. He was so blacked out, and man.
Can you read
All right.
number 35, A Bad Week?
Read number 35 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your reading voice is amazing.
I stumble every once in a while, though.
Well, it's not written by you. I stumble and it is written by me.
All right. A bad week?
Oh, yeah.
When Trent Barrera was pledging the Sig-H fraternity, he and his pledge class had to dress as Smurfs for Halloween. They wore white pants, white hats, and they didn't wear shirts. Instead, they each dyed their skin blue. On Halloween night, Trent and his pledge class threw a party at our fraternity house. Each of the pledges had tasks: letting people in the door, serving drinks at the bar, filling up cubs at the keg, and getting drinks for the fraternity brothers. You know, regular pledge duties. I'm having trouble getting through this one because I know where it's going.
You've read 2 paragraphs and you already know that this is like one of the best stories.
All right, during the party, one of the fraternity brothers told Trent Barrera that he had to walk a drunk girl back to her apartment. Trent was completely wasted, but he didn't have a choice. Plus, it was the right thing to do.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Before you go on?
Yeah. Totally agreed. Trent walked the girl to her apartment without any problems. When he was on the way back to the fraternity house, he heard a car creeping up behind him. He was underage, wasted, and dressed like a Smurf with his dyed blue skin and no shirt. When Trent turned around, he saw the car creeping up behind him was a cop car. Like a smurf out of hell, Trent took off running, but he was caught almost instantly. When he was brought back to the patrol car, he was carded and breathalyzed. The officer said if Trent could call a friend to pick him up, he'd let him go. Trent didn't have a cell phone in his Smurf attire, so he couldn't call anyone to pick him up. As a result, he was taken to the drunk tank.
Isn't that so shitty?
It's so shitty. Officer, you ain't got a cell I can use? Can I use yours? Do I get one phone call before we go, please? When Trent got to jail, it was a packed madhouse. For fun, the cops started touring Trent around the cells to rile up the prisoners. Nobody else was dressed in a Halloween costume. They threw Trent into the drunk tank. It was filled with rowdy, middle-aged town drunks. As an underage drunk student, being thrown in a cell with a bunch of Radford townies while dressed as a Smurf was terrifying to Trent. Once the drunks saw the fear in the poor Smurf's eyes, they started screaming at him. Within a few minutes, the entire cell was screaming at Trent. They wanted to fight him because they were racist against blue people.
You can't make this shit up, dude.
When the people in the cell started to fight Trent, he screamed for help. The cops came and took him out of the drunk tank and put him in his own cell. Trent was left alone until the next morning. He was breathalyzed again, but his BAC was still too high so he was kept until the afternoon. Imagine being that drunk.
That you were still drunk.
Where they breathalyze you in the morning and they're like, dude, you're still drunk. You have to stay till the afternoon. Holy shit.
But what is that for an underage kid? It's probably pretty low in comparison to what they'd let a drunken Radford townie out at.
I mean, yeah. You make a good point.
Go on.
When Trent got out, he had a citation for drunk in public for underage possession of alcohol. He called someone in the fraternity to pick him up. When he got back to campus, Trent was hazed. He was not counseled in any way by the fraternity. For the next few days, Trent's mental health deteriorated. He had reached his mental threshold as a pledge. A week later, our fraternity had an event known as Basement Week. This is when we lock our pledges in a fraternity house basement for about a week. We only allow them to leave for classes, library hours, and to perform favors. It's a week-long hazapalooza. During this... I'm sorry, I skipped something. This was disastrous for Trent's mental well-being. During Trent's basement week, there was a night when our fraternity brothers hazed the absolute shit out of the pledges. The pledges were on their knees in the frat house basement, reciting the Greek alphabet, getting concoctions thrown at them, doing push-ups, getting screamed at, and eating onions. During the hazing, one of the brothers told Trent that he wasn't cut out for the fraternity. Trent had already lost his mind as a Smurf. This moment was when he lost his mind as a man. He stood up and balled up his fists. A lineup of fraternity brothers grinned at Trent, waiting to see what he was going to do. They screamed at him to get back on his knees and to get back in line, but he wouldn't listen. Trent knew he couldn't hit any of the fraternity brothers. Unfortunately, he had lost his mind, and he wanted to punch something. He started punching himself in the face. The fraternity brothers tried to stop Trent when they realized he was punching himself really hard. While he was punching himself, he screamed, "I don't give a fuck anymore. I don't give a fuck anymore." Once the brothers calmed Trent down, they stopped the hazing session for the evening. They told the pledges that they had to take care of Trent and that he better not hurt himself in their care. Although the hazing had stopped, the pledges still had to sleep in the basement. The next morning, Trent woke up with a black eye. He told his pledge brothers that he felt liberated. The pledge class stayed in the basement of the fraternity house for another 2 days and finished the event. Almost a month later, Trent made it into the fraternity. He said that pledging a fraternity was the greatest time in his life that he'd never want to do again.
That was a rough week for old Trent there.
Oh man, the punching himself in the face, that's when I started laughing in the beginning. Is like, I know where this is going. This is right before.
Yeah, it was a bad week.
I think in our pledge theater, we had a Smurf with a black eye. That was one of our things.
Your turn to do 32 and 33.
32 and 33?
Mm-hmm. They're both kind of like around the same time.
Okay. I love this this camera shot of the book cover.
It's great. It's great. All the thumbnails are going to look fantastic. More so because they have you and I in them. But
it's just such a great camera angle because my face isn't covered. You can see the microphone,
Mhm.
see the cover of the book crystal clear. All right, 32. Ian and Avery fight. Characters are Avery, Curtis, Ian, and Ovi. Avery had been hooking up with a girl named Alicia for a few weeks at Radford. He fell in love, but she didn't feel the same way. Avery left early for Christmas break, and Alicia stayed. When Alicia stayed, she had sex with one of my other fraternity brothers named Ian. She fell in love with Ian, creating a lover's entanglement. An entanglement.
You know how this happens, right?
An entanglement.
That's
Yeah,
that
it
Will
happens
Smith
because
line.
it happens because there was a cheating whore. That's why this happened.
Go on.
Couldn't just be honest and say, dude, it's over.
Mm-hmm. When Avery came back,
She fell in love with Ian, creating a lover's entanglement. God, that stupid fucking word. Damn you. When Avery came back from Christmas break and called Alicia, she wasn't interested in him anymore. She told him she was hooking up with Ian. Ian was in the same house as Avery at that time. Avery ran into the kitchen and sucker punched Ian. They started fighting in our kitchen during one of the parties. It was pretty white trash. The fight was inevitably broken up. Even though the fight had been broken up, the guys still wanted to fight one another. As soon as they got the opportunity, they started fighting again. This time it was on the porch of our house. Avery punched Ian in the eye and it swelled up right away. The fight was broken up again, leaving Ian wanting revenge. Even though he had the victory by nailing Alicia, he still wanted to punch Avery back. Later in the night, everyone had thought that the fighting was over. Avery was behind one of our brother's houses pissing when a coked up Ian ran up and beat the absolute shit out of him. There was nobody there to break it up, and Ian beat Avery until he cried uncle. Ian won the war and got the girl.
so
Wow.
fucked up, right?
That's way fucked up. That's way fucked up.
Wait until the guy's pissing.
And
then
then
you just
beat
beat
the
the shit out of him.
absolute shit out of
Yeah.
him. And he got the girl. All right. Just a little spat. Farley and Jeannie. Farley never hit a woman in his life, but he did spit in one's face.
That's
was
the
a gr-
whole story right there. Done.
Done.
You don't need to read any more.
And
if you want to
good
know
night.
more.
Read the book.
Yes. Okay. If you want to know more, here he goes.
This is on the Patreon, right?
Yeah.
There was a girl named Jeannie that had already caused some drama in our fraternity. After the drama had subsided, she invited her friends to come into town for more than 2 weeks. Jeannie's friends were spending a lot of time at our parties. They weren't really the best crowd to have around as they weren't very social. While they were visiting, they got into a fight with Farley, of all people, one of our kindest brothers. Farley was about to fill up his beer, and one of them pushed him out of the way. Farley stumbled back towards the sink of his own kitchen and retaliated. Defending himself as always, Farley pummeled this guy. Then he took him outside and kicked him out of the party. When Farley walked back inside, Jeannie started screaming at Farley and told him he couldn't treat people like that. Jeannie hadn't seen what caused the fight, only the aftermath. She slapped Farley as hard as she could. Farley didn't want to hit her back, so he spat in her face instead. She instantly started crying and said, "That's the most disrespectful thing someone has ever done to me." Farley said, "It's just a little spit," and walked back to the party. When he got inside, we asked him what happened. Without skipping a beat, he said, "Just a little spat."
Fucking comedian, dude.
Oh, Farley.
Okay.
You
You want to read a couple more?
want to do 36, Shampoo That Hair?
Yes. And then 18 and 19
Okay.
and 16.
All right. 36. Shampoo That Hair. Characters Forrest, Patrick O'Connor, and Ron. The last week of pledging in most fraternities is known as Hell Week. In my fraternity, we required all the pledges to stay up for several days without much sleep, if any, during Hell Week. During Hell Week, our pledges can take one day for themselves called pledge paybacks. It lasts for 24 hours and starts whenever the pledges call out pledge paybacks. The pledges can't be hazed, but they can also haze brothers if they can capture them. This day is also their only chance to catch up on sleep. When Ron Russo was pledging Sig H, the majority of his pledge class only wanted to sleep during pledge playbacks. Ron and his pledge brother Patrick O'Connor were the only ones that wanted to get revenge on the brothers. Ron and Patrick captured a brother named Forrest Grimes. Out of all the hazes Patrick O'Connor could have chosen for Forrest to perform, he made him take a shower. Patrick O'Connor told Forrest to strip down to his boxer shorts and get into a bathtub. When Forrest was down to his boxers, Patrick told him to start shampooing his own hair. The water was cold and Forrest was pissed. Forrest felt completely degraded. He was shampooing his hair and his boxers in a cold tub in front of 2 pledges he had hazed for a semester. While Forrest was shampooing his hair, Patrick O'Connor talked shit to him. He kept saying, "Yeah, you like that, don't you, buddy? It's nice to clean your hair." Forrest didn't say a word. He was completely pissed at Patrick. It didn't matter because Patrick made it into the fraternity a few days later. The shampoo incident foreshadowed a heavily closeted Patrick O'Connor.
What do you think about that story?
I'm trying to remember the real names. Forrest, Patrick O'Connor, and Ron. I think I know who O'Connor is. I know who Forrest is. Ron is the one I don't remember.
There you go.
Ah, I see. I have the key, folks. I have the key. Ron. All right. 16, 18, and 19. In that order?
Yes.
The beauty of this book, folks, is you can jump around. There's so many great stories.
Jump around. Jump.
Around. Okay. Party Stopper. Delta Mu and Sig H. My fraternity threw a mixer with Delta Mu. It was a sorority chock full of easy and attractive girls. When a fraternity and sorority agree to have a mixer, they each agree to bring a certain amount of people. We agreed to bring 20 people each. The night of the mixer, more than 20 sorority girls showed up at our house. They were more than disappointed to see our numbers. We only had 9 or 10 brothers at our house, half of what we agreed to. All of our brothers were blacked out, coked up, or high from smoking weed. One of them was Kyle Baker. He was coked to the gills and ready to roll.
Can I just pause you? So imagine like the sorority that there's more than 20 people and we each agreed to bring 20 people and we have 9 or 10.
And they brought more than 20.
Yeah, so now there's 30 people in the house, 2-to-1 ratio, and it was supposed to be even. So that means no matter what, there's 10 bummed out girls to a minimum. But realistically, there's 20 bummed out girls in our house. Go on.
All right, let's see here. The party went on for a few hours and things were going pretty well. Kyle Baker left the party for a bit and came back. When he came back, he was in a coke-fueled frenzy. Kyle walked up to a girl at the party and it looked like he was going to hit her in the face. Then he started calling her a cunt. When one of her sorority sisters walked over, he started calling them both cunts. This snowballed until he was calling all of the Delta Mu sorority girls cunts. The other fucked up fraternity brothers tried to calm him down, but it didn't work out well. His uncontrollable temper continued to worsen. He ended up clearing out the entire party. Needless to say, that was our last mixer with Delta Mu.
What a shame, right?
Yeah. 18. Brock and Tony. Parkour St. Patty's Day.
I can't remember if I told this one or not.
Brock and Tony were like 2 peas in a pod on St. Patrick's Day. They spent the entire day drinking together. Around 10 o'clock at night, they were 3 sheets to the wind and feeling great. Brock and Tony decided to take a walk through one of the most populated dorms at Radford University. They wanted to flirt with single girls. At one point, they discovered that on the 2nd floor of Moffett Hall, there was a door that led out to a balcony. Of course, they were drunk, so they went out onto the balcony. When they got out there, they saw that they could climb from the balcony they were on to the roof of the dorm. There they were, on top of the roof of Moffett Hall. They were wasted and shooting the shit when Brock said, "Do you think I could jump from this roof onto the next?" It was about a 12-foot jump, and there was no way it could have physically happened. Tony wasn't paying attention and said, "Yeah, I think you could make it," having no idea what was about to happen. Brock took a running start and jumped like Neo from the Matrix off the roof towards the other roof. Then, like the Roadrunner from the Looney Tunes cartoon, he fell like an anvil towards the ground. Brock fell 3 stories and hit the ground below. He cried out in pain. Tony ran downstairs and around the dorm. When he got outside, he found Brock laid out and hurting. Tony tried walking Brock back to his house, but the pain was too much. Brock said, "We got to get someone to drive us home, man. I can't walk." Tony found some people in the dorm parking lot. He offered them cigarettes to drive Brock and him home. When they got home, Brock took 2 Percocets that he had in his drawer, and the pain was still too much. He started to pass out, and he got Tony to call an ambulance. The ambulance arrived quickly and took Brock to the hospital. After Brock was x-rayed, the doctor told him that a career in parkour was not in his future. Brock had broken his back, fractured 2 of his vertebrae, and fractured his pelvis.
That's a tough one, man.
He fell 3 fucking stories. He's lucky he didn't pop.
Yep. You hit your head from 3 stories, you can hit your head from 10 feet and die.
Like he's so lucky.
You can hit your head from less than that and die.
Man, he should have rolled.
I don't think rolling was in the cards, dude.
Bushes? Were there bushes? Any bushes
Aim
nearby?
for the bushes.
I mean, that's your only hope. 3 stories. God. It's like 30, roughly 30 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, depending on how high up the foundation was, maybe more.
Yeah.
He's just Corbin. Characters. Corbin. When Corbin got kicked out of school, he continued living at our fraternity house for a while. He had no place to stay, and he slept in our fraternity's house living room for a semester. The living room had 4 long sofas in it. Almost every night after partying, he would piss on whatever sofa he was sleeping on. His bedwetting became so widely known that people who frequented our parties would avoid the sofas entirely. Whenever new people came to our parties and sat down on those sofas, they would unknowingly be sitting on Corbin's disgusting bacterial waste. We constantly had to re-explain to new guests that the sofas were gross and they didn't want to be seen sitting on them. Didn't want to be sitting on them. We warned people not to sleep or sit on them, but after a few drinks, some people didn't give a fuck. People hooked up on the sofas slept on the sofas. It was gross. It got so out of control that we designated a specific piss sofa for him, so at least a few of our sofas could be safe. Eventually, Corbin's dad became furious that Corbin was living in a frat house and not doing anything with his life. He drove up to Radford and took Corbin back home. After Corbin left Radford, our sofas rejoiced, but something was never quite the same.
I remember one night, Corbin was sleeping on one of our other fraternity brothers' futons, and I was like talking to my other brother, and then Corbin gets up to go to the bathroom, and he's completely buck naked under the blanket. And the dude is just like, "What the fuck?" Oh god. Oh.
Oh man. That's just Corbin, huh?
All right, what
Oh,
are we at
man.
here? 23 minutes? I think we can fit in like a couple more.
Are you chopping these into individual clips?
No, should I be?
I kind of feel like you should.
I will next time. I'm sorry.
I mean, this could be a ton of little short little YouTube clips.
Okay. Well, one sec. There you go.
Chop. All right, where am I at? What story's next?
One story.
What number?
10.
10? 10 and 9, are those the ones that are left?
Yeah, or you can like shoot the shit and just do any one, but 9 and 10 are pretty good.
All right, let's see. 9 and 10. Jewel, Kyle, and Jewel's boyfriend. Cocaine crazed. One of our sweethearts named Jewel and a guy from a different fraternity were dating. Jewel and her boyfriend invited Kyle over to do some blow one night. The 3 of them snorted cocaine together and had a grand old time, as one does when they consume cocaine. It wasn't long before Jewel and her boyfriend started snorting cocaine off of one another. Jewel started by snorting cocaine off her boyfriend's arms. Then her boyfriend took bumps off of Jewel's neck. You can see where this is going, right? Jewel lifted up her boyfriend's shirt and poured cocaine on his lower stomach. She blew it all, and things got passionate. Before Kyle knew it, he was watching porn. Jewel and her boyfriend started fucking in front of Kyle. Kyle quickly snorted 2 more lines since they were already cut out, and then he left. Kyle loved cocaine, but he didn't want to be part of a cocaine-crazed sex that was about to go down in that room. He definitely probably could have been part of that cocaine-fueled sex that was going on in that room.
Should have. Yeah. he failed in all parts in that situation.
Wow. 10. One Strike Kassandra. Characters: Kassandra. When Kassandra was a freshman, she went out drinking, as all freshmen do. After a night out on the town, she came back to her dorm room drunk. Kassandra had a roommate that was her friend from high school. She assumed when she came back to her room drunk, her roommate wouldn't mind. Around 2 a.m., Kassandra had to throw up. When Kassandra started throwing up, her roommate left the room and called the resident director of their dorm. Within a few minutes, the resident director and 3 other campus employees came into the dorm. They knocked on her door, and her roommate, who had returned, let them in. By this time, Kassandra was already back in her bed. The director looked at her and said, "I heard you've been drinking." There was no lying. Kassandra looked like a hot mess. She received a strike on campus, but the police were never called, so she was not cited for underage drinking. Kassandra had to take alcohol classes as her punishment. Kassandra and her roommate's relationship became sour for the rest of the semester. The final straw wasn't even the stitching. It was the day that Kassandra accidentally updated her roommate's AOL Messenger status.
Do you remember what AOL was?
That's why I'm chuckling.
AOL Messenger was like a Slack or Teams or Discord or whatever you guys use these days. I don't know.
mean, or a Facebook chat, or like an open-ended. It was an open-ended, like, instant messaging program.
Yeah.
Like a text message. It was like a
ICQ.
text message on the internet.
Exactly.
And yeah, it was a modern day text message, but back on the internet, where you could send images inside of it and whatever, and in real time have a conversation.
A
See when
DM.
somebody else was typing and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember in your away message. I remember having away messages.
And if
Different
you
custom-
bumped your
different
mouse,
custom away
the away
messages,
message would
yeah.
turn off and it would say that you were there.
One day, when Kassandra was leaving her room, she bumped into her roommate's desk with her big ass. This caused a vibration that moved her roommate's mouse and turned the screensaver off. This effectively turned her AOL Messenger status from away to online. What Kassandra didn't know was that her roommate was a lie-spinning spider on campus. She had told some guy she was out of town. When her AOL Messenger status changed, she was called out for not being out of town. She was actually hooking up with a different guy on campus and was busted. When she got back to her room, she flipped out on Kassandra. After Christmas break, they didn't talk anymore. 15 years later, Kassandra saw the girl at a bar in Virginia Beach, VA. The girl was still crazy. I want to know that story.
Imagine being stuck in a room with somebody for an entire semester after that and hating them. You're like, oh fuck, I'm walking on eggshells. I don't want to get in trouble with this bitch.
Yeah, it just sounds terrible. It sounds very unfortunate, and God, what a shitty living situation. I would never want to go back to my dorm.
Mm-hmm.
What adventures? Characters: Jewel. The sweethearts in my fraternity have always been great to party with. One of my favorite sweethearts to party with was Jewel. There was an afternoon when Jewel drank an entire bottle of whiskey. Later in the night, she threw up while hazing people. While she was yelling at some pledges in the basement, she straight up projectile vomited. She didn't hit any pledges, but it would have been funny if she did. The pledges did a great job at maintaining their composure, and they didn't laugh. When Jewel finished throwing up, she continued yelling at the pledges. When she finished hazing them, she peed her pants. Nobody noticed her pants were wet, and they all went out to a local bar to keep drinking. It was days like this that made Jewel so much fun to party with. I love how that's the last line and it's on the next page. She was fun to party with.
Yes.
I think she's the one that got my mom doing the keg stand when my mom came to visit.
Aw. She's a pretty awesome person. Most of our sweethearts are.
Yeah, I remember them being pretty cool. Most of them.
Mm-hmm.